This is the Plagmanrules Podcast. Right, everybody, welcome back. It is Monday, August 21st, and we've just got a couple of stories to talk about today. First, we're going to talk about the unfortunate passing of Jerry Lewis. We'll kind of look through kind of my personal feelings on him and a couple of his memorable roles. And, of course, we'll take a look at what happened at the weekend box office. So, kind of too bad that we have to start out on this note here, but we did lose yesterday, as of Sunday. We lost Jerry Lewis, who, of course, world-famous comedian, made dozens and dozens of movies and is really renowned around the world as one of the funniest men of all time. Now, the first film that I saw him in happened to be one where he teamed up with his, famous co-star Dean Martin, and it was The Caddy. And that, of course, happened to be one of the most famous songs by Dean Martin, That's Amore. That's where the song came from, was from this film. And I remember I watched it because it was on Turner Classic Movies. I was staying at my grandparents' house at the time, and they saw, the title and they heard the music. They got all excited and they said, yeah, this is a great movie. So sat down and watched it. And yeah, Jerry Lewis is, of course, kind of that physical comedy tour de force. There's not really ever going to be anybody else like him, especially when he's teamed up with Dean Martin. It's a really great pairing, and really it's a phenomenal movie too. Go back and watch that one. But of course, I think the role that I'm going to think of whenever I think Jerry Lewis, and I think most other people do too, and that's The Nutty Professor. Now that one, I've rewatched that one several times. Every once in a while it'll be on or something and I'll catch it. And while I do think it's a terrific movie, the Eddie Murphy version, of course, is great too, but what's really good is that they're two totally different movies. And there's a lot of famous quotes from Nutty Professor. I think, again, that's going to be the one that kind of defines him as an actor. And even though, I think that he will be remembered as being a co-star alongside Dean Martin, his solo efforts, I think, are not to be overlooked, especially something like Nutty Professor, which is, I think, a really great classic comedy from the 60s. Again, one, if you have not seen that one, pretty easy to find. Go and catch that one and, have some good laughs with it. All right, so it was kind of unfortunate to see him pass away. He was 91 years old, but still, quite a career he had, and he died of natural causes. Wasn't like he was sick or anything. And of course, he's very famous also for his charities, donating to all the children's charities. Everybody he worked with, pretty much everybody had all positive things to say about him. So it's a loss, but one that, I think we look upon fondly and say, this guy lived a full life, got to do just about everything he wanted to do, and now he's in death. He's kind of teamed back up now with Dean Martin, Foster Brooks, all the other great comedians from the 50s, 60s, 70s that they made great memories with. And so if you get a chance, Google maybe some of his famous scenes in Nutty Professor or The Caddy or The Bellboy or a couple of his other comedies there, or find some of the roasts. He didn't do as many roasts as, say, Dean Martin did or Foster Brooks did. You can even do like Don Rickles, those guys. But the roasts from the 60s, 70s, 80s, terrific stuff, especially when they get with Johnny Carson. Really good stuff. So, just a couple of recommendations there. If you're not too familiar with who Jerry Lewis was, hopefully, there's a couple recommendations there in case you want to look up this guy. He is a comedic legend. Okay, so with the sad stuff out of the way, let's go ahead and talk about the weekend box office. Okay, so in the number one spot, we had The Hitman's Bodyguard. That was a new film this weekend. $21.6 million its opening weekend. Now, I know tracking was kind of aiming towards 17.5. So I think a lot of people are saying, this probably overperformed. I put it at 19.5. I thought the pairing of Ryan Reynolds and Sam Jackson was a great idea, and the marketing really hit that mark, especially the online marketing really hit the Nick Fury meets Deadpool thing. So I think that's really what brought it over the edge and really made it a film that people wanted to see. And as we get toward the end of August here, we're really going to see a dip in the box office here, especially in the next couple weeks, because there's not really too many titles coming out. Once we get to September 8th, though, It comes out, and that's, of course, the Stephen King adaptation. That one's probably aiming at 50, maybe 55, even 60 million, I've heard, is a possibility on that one. I thought like a couple weeks ago it was a risk to say it's going to open to 50 million, but now there's, articles kind of coming out from Deadline and stuff saying, look out, that one in the next couple weeks could be making about 60 million opening weekend, and that's at the high range of expectations, by the way. Speaking of another New Line Warner Brothers horror film, Annabelle Creation hung around in second place. That got 15.5 million off 50 55% from week 1, which I thought it would drop only about 50%. I mean, I've seen the reviews on it from critics has been mostly positive, but some fans and, moviegoers have been pretty split on it. So I actually wasn't way too shocked that it fell more than 50%. Still at 64 million after 2 weeks, that's, I think, a really great result, especially considering that the first Annabelle really was not 100%, everybody loved it kind of movie. Okay, in third place, we had Logan Lucky. This is Steven Soderbergh's return to filmmaking. This one didn't open in as many theaters as Hitman's Bodyguard. It wasn't in the same amount of theaters as a lot of other movies out there right now, but it only did about 8 million opening weekend. I put it down at 9 million. I thought it would, come in, tracking was at 12, so I lowered my expectations a little bit for this one. But still, for the cast involved, for Soderbergh's name, I just didn't think, I didn't think it was going to be like a 10, 15, $20 million hit by any means. But 8 million, I mean, you kind of have to take it as it is, but still, it's not a terrific result, but still something, at least it wasn't like 5 million or 4 million, something disastrous. But to come in third place opening weekend here, especially when you've got like Dunkirk, Spider-Man Homecoming, the Emoji Movie, some of these other movies that are starting to make really good bank now at the box office, despite some, kind of couple rough weeks here, that's still something to note there. Okay, so we got a couple of milestones here to mention. First of all, cleared out in 14th place, Despicable Me 3 passed 250 million at the domestic box office as of this weekend. I mean, obviously, I think has been the runaway hit for any family audiences out there. That's the one that they've really paid to see over and over again. Really, that one, and Cars 3 has made close to 150 million now, but still not a great summer for the family audiences. I know we've had some other ones that have really missed too, especially like The Nut Job 2, which is in 5th place this weekend. That one is only at 17 million after 2 weeks. And yeah, it's just not a great summer for it. The Emoji Movie is probably going to stand as the third best one. That one has now cleared 70 million here in the States, but still not a terrific result. On a happier note though, Girls Trip in 8th place, again, kind of the standout this summer as far as comedies go. That one has now passed $100 million. It actually did it on Thursday, but after its weekend here, it's now just about $105 million here in the States. And again, has kind of been the standout comedy of the summer. And that's if you don't count like something like Baby Driver or The Big Sick, which were kind of, well, Big Sick was limited release. Baby Driver is kind of more of an action comedy. So once you take those two out, pretty much Girls Trip is the runaway comedy film of the summer. Okay, a couple other things we'll mention here. Wind River entered the top 10 this weekend. This is one I'm dying to see it. Weinstein release made $3 million over the weekend here in 10th place. It's only in 694 theaters, so that means its per theater average is about 4,300, and it's made about $4 million here through its limited to moderate release. Now, it's hopefully it's going to be in more theaters here. Again, I'm dying to see this one. Looks like it could be a really great movie, but it's doing very well here in its limited and moderate release, so that's definitely something worth mentioning there. Okay, one more to mention here. This was kind of this is a limited release movie, but Patty Cakes opened up this weekend through Fox Searchlight. They only put it in 14 theaters. It only got about 66,000 for the per theater average. It's less than 5,000. It's closer to 4,700. Now, this is one I wanted to quickly mention because it was picked up after Sundance. Everybody at Sundance loved it. And then, I've seen some of the reviews are a little more mixed now that it's gone into the wider release here for all critics to see. I don't think it's a terrific result here. We have seen some limited release movies this summer, like A Ghost Story, that looked like it was going to be one that opens in 4 theaters and then eventually gets into that 1,000, 2,000 theater release. That one didn't do it. Another one kind of recently like that was The Only Living Boy in New York. We mentioned that a couple of weeks ago. That one still not doing great in its limited release. That's another one that I think they had plans to where, hey, if it's going to start small, let's start building it on top of that. Kind of like The Big Sick did, but unfortunately it looks like these two are kind of some examples here of some of those summer releases that look like they're not going to quite get penned out to what the studio was expecting from them. All right, well, it was a pretty slow weekend as far as movie news goes. There wasn't really too much else to talk about here, so we got a really short episode here today. Sorry about that, guys. Anyway, so we'll just leave off here with a couple of housekeeping items. First of all, if you have any ideas or discussion points that you want brought up on the podcast, you can leave a comment here on YouTube. If there's a story that I didn't cover yet that you say, hey, talk about this, or something to that degree, you can go ahead and leave a comment here. Otherwise, I do have a Gmail account set up, and that's plagmanrulespodcast@gmail.com. That's plagmanrules podcast@gmail.com. Again, a discussion point, something like that you want to bring up, you can leave a message there on Gmail. Otherwise, if there's kind of like a rating thing, like, hey, you like the podcast, don't like it, you can also leave a comment or leave something at the Gmail account there. Okay, so we'll see what happens the rest of the week here, but kind of a slow start to the week. That usually means something big's going to happen, so we'll see what happens. I'll be back again on Friday for the next edition of the Plagmanrules Podcast.